Okay, welcome back everyone. We are on to Planet Caravan. This time we're starting a new thing here. Although it's not that new really. We're talking about the planets. You know him, you love him. Number one, Mr. Mercury. We got the planet Mercury. Lovely planet, although it's kind of boring, no offense to Mercury. But that's okay, we still love Mercury, we still gotta learn about it. It's a planet in our solar system, it's amazing. I have some notes for us here that we're gonna jot down and learn about our lovely planet and our wonderful solar system that we find ourselves in. Here we are, here we go. Okay, so Mercury, as we can see here, is named after the Roman god of, I've seen a couple names of him, but he's known as Mercury or Mercurios, so pretty simple there, kind of course he's named, I've seen both, I'm gonna call him Mercurios here. Now the Greek equivalent of this guy, you probably heard of this guy's name, his name is Hermes. So we got either Hermes or Mercurios, Mercury, kind of cool. These are both messengers of the gods, so it's kind of cool because Mercury is the closest planet to the sun in our solar system. It's close to our sun, but we can exoplanets, that's over 5,000 exoplanets, planets other solar systems, other stars. We've actually close to the sun, it's not that close. It's not us, it's super close. Other solar systems are way closer. But the guy is very fake, right? He's Mr. Nazi, he's very close to the sun, he says hello to the sun, he says his message. Also for some reason, Mercurian, so if you ever visit Mercury, or if you're an alien from the planet Mercury, you'll be known as a Mercurian, which is kind of cool. But for some reason, the sci-fi author, Arthur C. Clarke, one of his novels, I think it was Rendezvous with Rama, I think. One of his novels, he actually had, and this was in the future, that there were actually humans on the planet Mercury, and he actually called those humans Hermians. So he actually used the Greek name on the planet Mercury. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I always feel like in the future we should just call people from Mercury, if there's aliens on Mercury or if we want to live on Mercury at some point, we can call ourselves Hermians rather than Mercurians, but that's a side point, just for fun. Anyway, so we got Mercury here. What is the diameter of Mercury? Well, kind of cool. It's pretty small. It is the smallest planet in our solar system. It's something like 3,000, I believe it's 3,032 miles-ish. Don't quote me on that. It's over 3,000 miles, just over 3,000 miles, which is actually really tiny for a planet, very, very small. Because remember, Earth is about 8,000 miles, so we're much larger. Even more surprising than the tiny size of Mercury, poor little Mercury here, it's the closest and smallest planet to the solar system. There's actually a couple moons in our own solar system that are actually larger, and we will be learning about on the channel as well. Mercury is smaller than these two planets, although it is more massive, and we'll talk about one of its coolest features of Mercury, our wonderful planet here. It is more massive than these moons, so even though they're actually slightly larger in terms of size, if they're like a big beefy dude, like these are big beefy dudes, Mercury is like a little bit chunkier. So Mercury's been like eating some cookies or something like that. So Mercury's got some weight to him, and we'll discover why that is exactly. Another cool moon that I wanted to discuss in terms of with Mercury here. So we know the diameter of Mercury is about this, a little over 3,000 miles. Well, actually, it's almost exactly the same size as Callisto, another moon in our solar system. So I'm gonna jot down. I got some space here. A moon I already talked about on the channel, a beautiful, wonderful disco ball in space. Callisto is exactly 3,000 miles in diameter. Remember that for the test. Mercury is technically smaller than these two and almost exactly the same size as Callisto. It's just barely wider than Callisto by like 32 miles. Kind of crazy. I just want to throw that fact there. But it is slightly bigger, so it beats out Callisto by a hair there. So kind of cool factoid about Mercury there, as I dropped my eraser there. So its year is pretty cool here, 88 days long, which is really crazy to think about. So a year on Mercury is just a little bit longer than an entire day. That's how slowly Mercury spins. Very, very slow. It's kind of a cool resonance that it has here, that it spins very, very, very slow, as well as a year is only 88 days long. That's how much closer it is. So unlike here on Earth, we got 365 days, sometimes 366 with our wonderful leap years. Well, on Mercury, it's 88 days. That's how fast it is moving around the sun. Pretty crazy, super close. So, probably the coolest thing of Mercury, among its like days and years, which is pretty cool here, and it's also its other sizes with moons and stuff. It has a big, beefy core. Big, beefy, juicy core. If you bite into the middle of Mercury, like a Tootsie Pop, how many licks does it get to the center? Not many. Because its core is big and beefy, and it takes up about, actually look up the numbers, the core itself, the inner solid core, takes up about 42% of the entire planet's volume. In this case, we're looking at diameter. If the core itself, the solid inner core, is like 1,200 miles, over 1,200 miles. So it's like a little north of 1,200 miles, which is crazy to think about. It's like over 1,200 miles. Well, that's like a huge amount of Mercury itself. It's almost like this giant cannonball in space. It's like this big ball of iron, and then just has this like crusty old surface on top, and that's Mercury. And it's like, oh, that's weird. It's like a 3,000 mile ball, like cannonball. It's like, oh, coming at you. It's like, that's Mercury. Kind of crazy. So that's just insane to think about that. Most of Mercury is just pure the ball of iron and the outer core, all that molten metal and rock moving around, which is just insane to think about. That Mercury, as small as it is, it's, you know, a couple moons are bigger than it, and yet it's mostly just a core. It's mostly this big ball of iron with this cool magma or this liquid metal layer outside of it, which is just kind of streaming around. That's just a fascinating fact of Mercury, and more studies on it are needed to learn about why is this planet such a huge core? What about it? Is it the location of it in the solar system? Is it the bombardment, the asteroids that hit it? It's fascinating. Maybe some of the mantle was like taken away, like some of the outer layers were taken off or taken away. I don't know, it's just interesting. It's a very fun, interesting factoid. Because of this huge, juicy, beefy, dense core, it also has a big magnetic field. Even though it's a tiny planet, it also has a wonderful magnetic field. Pretty big for a size. Now, this a big magnetic field, quote unquote, I actually looked up the numbers here. It's about 1% the size of Earth, so we got the real magnetic field in your face, Mercury. So it actually has a tiny magnetic field compared to other planets, like Jupiter has a huge one, Earth has a decent one. But for its size, a planet this small should not really, I believe even scientists said, I believe astronomers and scientists have even speculated that it probably shouldn't really have a magnetic field, and it was almost a mystery for a while. And the fact that they discovered a magnetic field around Mercury, they're like, oh, they found out about the core. So then that kind of like, they kind of led one into the other. I believe they found out about the magnetic field first, and then they dipped into the core. Like, oh, that's why it has a magnetic field. It has a huge, giant core. Why does it have a huge, giant core? And so one question led into another, because technically a planet this small, 3,000 miles, is basically the size of a moon. And on top of that, there's not too much. It doesn't have any moons. That's another thing too. Mercury is a moonless planet. Poor Mercury, it's all by itself. Some planets are. They're solo people. So Mercury is a solo person, just chilling by himself. But that's just an interesting fact too, that it does have a magnetic field, which is pretty interesting. So it, maybe if life pops up there someday, maybe, probably not, but it would have some protection from cosmic rays, from some of the UV light. It does have a small but substantial magnetic field for its size, so kind of cool there too. One final factoid, I want to leave us here with Mercury. This is actually a really cool one. Way back in the day, Mr. Isaac Newton, our boy Isaac Fignoon, when he was doing all his amazing math and his discovery of gravity and all this crazy stuff, this gave a foundation for people like Kepler and other scientists. And it turns out all they needed to do was call this guy named Albert Einstein, Mr. Einstein, saving the universe again. There he is, our big brain boy, Mr. Einstein. So Mr. Einstein comes along and says, I got you figured out. The mass of the sun itself is like the thing that kind of like causes a huge dent in space and time, but also sends out these little ripple waves as well. And these little tiny waves, over time, they cause these little perturbations, as your fancy science term, They cause these little, it's kind of like waves in the water. So you fudge it this way, and you fudge it that way, and then it goes this way, and then it goes that way. And these little waves in space-time cause the planet to go tip this way, tilt that way. And it wasn't until Einstein that, and once we discovered about gravity waves and the kind of the relationship between gravity, between space, between time, that the math actually ended up working, and scientists could actually discover the exact precise location of Mercury. And with the new mathematics based on general relativity and gravity waves and all this crazy other stuff, they could actually pinpoint the exact location of Mercury in its orbit. So now we got it locked down pretty well. Pretty cool there. So that's about it for our wonderful Mercury. If you're from the planet Mercury, you're a Mercurian or a Hermian, whatever you prefer. It's a wonderful, beautiful planet, kind of boring, kind of cool. It's a giant cannonball in space, the biggest core in the solar system. There it is for our boy Mercury, our first trip through the solar system here on Planet Caravan. Join me for more trips through our solar system coming up.